Attorney General Bill Barr, who served in the Trump administration, knows the former president very well. Mr. Attorney General, welcome back to Fox News Sunday. Good to have you. What about this chief argument that comes up for the president's allies and his legal team that this should have been handled under the Presidential Records Act, not this Espionage Act charge and other federal statutes that were used here?
Well, it started out under the Presidential Records Act and the archives trying to retrieve documents that Trump had no right to have. But it quickly became clear that what the government was really worried about were these classified and very sensitive documents. I was shocked by the degree of sensitivity of these documents and how many there were, frankly. And so the government's agenda was to get those, protect those documents and get them out. And I think it was perfectly appropriate to do that. It was the right thing to do. And I think the counts under the Espionage Act that he willfully retained those documents are solid counts. Now, I do think we have to wait and see what the defense says and what proves to be true. But I do think that even half what Andy McCarthy said, which is if even half of it is true, then he's toast. I mean, it's a very detailed indictment, and it's very, very damning. And this idea of presenting Trump as a victim here, a victim of a witch hunt, is ridiculous. Yes, he's been a victim in the past. Yes, his adversaries have obsessively pursued him with phony claims, and I've been at his side defending against them when he is a victim. But this is much different. He's not a victim here. He was totally wrong that he had the right to have those documents. Those documents are among the most sensitive secrets that the country has. They have to be in the custody of the archivist. He had no right to maintain them and retain them. And he kept them in a way at Mar-a-Lago that anyone who really cares about national security, their stomach would churn at it.
So you see this as different and separate from what he would term the Russian hoax, what we saw from the Durham report. You see these as two totally separate tracks.
Yes, because in the Russian, there was nothing. There was no problem or issue underlying the Russiagate claim. It was an effort to knock him out with a false claim. Here, I think the government acted responsibly. They gave him every opportunity to return those documents. They acted with restraint. They were very deferential to him, and they were very patient. They talked to him for almost a year to try to get those documents, and he jerked them around. They finally went to a subpoena, and what did he do? According to the government, he lied and obstructed that subpoena. And then they did a search, and they found a lot more documents. And they're not even, I don't think they're even sure now whether they have everything. So they acted in a very patient way, and what they were met with was, according to the government and the indictment, very egregious obstruction.
Let me ask you this and clarify, because the Justice Department has wanted to say over and over again, this is not something Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, was involved in. This is the special counsel, Jack Smith, has complete autonomy, makes these own decisions. But in a case of this import, and with the special counsel statute, would this have to go to the Attorney General for some kind of review or decision-making process before this indictment happens and goes public?
Well, under the regulation, the call can be made just by the special counsel, but I'm sure they had worked out an agreement whereby he would keep the Attorney General in the loop, and if the Attorney General had strong feelings, he'd voice them. But I think the Attorney General said pretty early on he would be guided by the recommendation of the counsel. Now, we can't forget here that this entire thing came about because of reckless conduct of the president. If he had just turned over the documents, which I think every other person in the country would have done, they're the government's documents. They're official records. They're not his personal records. Battle plans for an attack on another country or Defense Department documents about our capabilities are in no universe Donald J. Trump's personal documents. They are the government's documents.
What about the arguments they'll say, okay, when it came to President Obama leaving, or, President Biden was vice president when some of these documents allegedly that he's got, that's a different question. But when you think about somebody like President Obama or President Clinton, the sock drawer case with President Clinton,
yes,
they'll point to these and say, listen,
so there are
other
two big
documents.
lies, I think, that are out there right now. One is, these other presidents took all these documents. Those were situations where they arranged with the archives to set up special space under the management, control, and security provided by the archivist to temporarily put documents until the libraries were ready. These were not people just putting them in their basement, okay? And the second thing that the president, this idea that the president has complete authority to declare any document personal is obvious. It's facially ridiculous. That opinion had to do with the distinction between official records, which are records prepared by government agencies for the purpose of government action, and personal documents as opposed to official documents, which are things prepared by the president, such as a diary or notes, which are not used in the government's deliberations. And yes, as to the second class, stuff that the president himself generates, the president has some discretion. But these are official documents. It's inarguable. The president's daily brief provided by the intelligence community is not Donald J. Trump's personal document, period.
I'm guessing that you're not going to join his legal team, as he's now putting together a new legal team.
Well,
do you still talk to the president? Like, how is he going to feel about your public take on this case?
Well, he's been angry with me for a while, but, you know, I defend the president on Russiagate. I stood up and called out Alvin Bragg's politicized hit job, and I have spoken out for 30 years about the abuse of the criminal justice process to influence politics. But this is simply not true. This particular episode of trying to retrieve those documents, the government acted responsibly, and it was Donald J. Trump who acted irresponsibly.
So again, innocent until presumed innocent unless otherwise proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Jack Smith said that in a court of law when he talked to us on Friday about this. So we'll watch and see as they now get to present a defense.